This video is over 10-4. We're going to be solving equations, and we're going to be just looking at different methods for solving. All of these equations we have solved at some point this year. We're just looking at what is the best approach and what is the most efficient ways for solving. To start out, we're going to talk about the three different methods for solving equations. The first one we call rewriting, the second one undoing, and the third one looking inside. So we'll do an example problem with each of those so that you can kind of see what each of them means. So starting out by solving by rewriting, right? This is going to include several of the different skills you've learned this year. So we're going to rewrite the equation. So we're thinking about things like distributing. You may have to factor the equation to rewrite it. And this includes multiplying or dividing to get rid of fractions and decimals. This is like you did in the first section or second section of this chapter, 10.1 and 10.2. Okay, so it's just basically trying to find a way to rewrite the equation to make it easier. So it includes all those different things and more. So the first one here, when we look at it, we have 4 times the quantity of x plus 3 equals 20. So in this case, we could maybe rewrite this by getting rid of the grouping symbols. We can apply our distributive property. So if we distribute our 4 through, we'd have 4x plus 4 times 3 is 12 is equal to 20. And now it's just a basic two-step equation. We'll go ahead and subtract our 12 from each side. And we've got 4x is equal to 8. Divide each side by 4. And x equals 2. Okay, so we just kind of refer to that as rewriting when we actually use the distributive property. Okay, you can always take it, plug it back in to check it. So let's just do that here. We won't do it on all three, but we'd have 4 times 2 plus 3 is equal to 20, which means 4 times 5 is 20. We know that answer is correct. Now the second method we'll refer to as undoing, and this is the most traditional, the one that you're probably the most used to, right? So undoing is just solving the equation by using the inverse operation. By using inverse operations. This is what you're typically used to doing. This is what you've probably done the most of, right? So in this case here, we have the same problem. If we looked at the order of operations, like if you knew what x was, and we listed out our order of operations, right? We would, if I knew what x was, I would add 3 to it, and then I would multiply by 4, and then that answer should be 20. So in order to undo it here, we're just going to go backwards through those order of operations. So again, I said the first step here would have been add 3, and then I would have multiplied by 4. So when we do undoing, we go backwards through it. So we're going to undo the multiplying by 4 first. We're going to divide both sides by 4. In this case, we'll be left with x plus 3, right, because the 4's will cancel. We have x plus 3 is now equal to 5. And then we undo the adding 3 by subtracting 3 using the inverse operation. And we now have x is equal to 2. And you see it's the same answer we got on the other problem. It's just a slightly different approach. And there isn't one that is more correct than the other. It's just which way do you feel more comfortable doing it. The last one is called solving by looking inside. And this one's using more just like logic and reasoning. So we're going to use using logic and reasoning to solve an equation. So what it means by looking inside, right? If we take this problem that we have, it's the same one, 4 times the quantity of x plus 3 equals 20. Let's just think about it for a second, right? If I said 4 times something is equal to 20, right? You would tell me that, well, 4 times 5 is equal to 20, right? So then that means that what we have inside of here, this x plus 3, must equal 5. So we could just go ahead and say this is x plus 3 equals 5. Right? You don't even have to write out this step here. I just want to make sure you understand what's going on. It's almost like you're doing a lot of it in your head, and some of you do some of this as you are solving equations already. And oftentimes when we're solving equations, we're using all of these different methods all in one problem. Okay, so now when I'm looking inside here, right, I'd be thinking about, okay, I have something plus 3 is equal to 5. I know that all of you could look at that and tell me, well, what's missing? Well, 2 plus 3 equals 5. So then that means here that our missing value here would have to be 2. That missing value is x. So x would have to be 2. So we get x equals 2. Okay, so it's just kind of using logic to help us figure out what our values would have to be. All right, let's slide down here for a moment. It says, match the names of the approaches on the left with the examples on the right. Number 1, rewriting. Number 2 is looking inside, and number 3 is undoing. So we have 3 different choices here. So let's read the first choice. The first choice here, choice number 1, says, if 3 plus the quantity of 4n minus 4 is equal to 12, then I know that 4n minus 4 must equal 9, right? Because we know then that, right, so 3 plus something equals 12, we know that this part has to be 9. So that was which method? Right, that should have been our looking inside. So looking inside should be choice number 1. Let's go on to the second one. It says here that subtracting is the opposite of adding. So for the equation 3 times the quantity of x minus 7 plus 4 equals 23, I can start by subtracting 4 from both sides. Right, so they're just looking to do like, hey, I'm going to subtract 4 from here and subtract 4 from here. So if you think about that, that would be the method of undoing. So that means that undoing, which is number 3, would be choice number 2. And by process of elimination, we know what the rewriting would be, but let's just read it anyway. So we've got on this one, this problem might be easier if I turned 4 times 2x minus 3 into 8x minus 12. And if you think about like what property happened there, well, we use the distributive property to turn that into 8x minus 12. So that means that choice number 3 must go up here with rewriting. So those are our answers. All right, next part, we're just going to do a few examples of each, and then you can practice. Like I said, when it comes down to it, you can solve them whichever method you prefer to use, but we're just going to do a couple examples of each right now. So for solving by rewriting, on letter A, we have negative 2 times the quantity of 3x minus 4 equals 20. So if I wanted to solve this by rewriting, right, remember that's what we're up here, and we're thinking about this one right up here. So including distributing, factoring, multiplying, dividing to get rid of fractions and decimals. So look at this one here. I have that grouping symbol. I could go ahead and distribute my negative 2 through. So negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. And negative 2 times negative 4 is going to be a positive 8. And now we'll just kind of work our way through and solve the equation. So we're going to isolate our x's by subtracting 8 from each side. So that 8 and negative 8 cancel out, right? So we have negative 6x is equal to 12. Divide each side by negative 6. And we get x is equal to negative 2. And again, you can check all of these, right? If you wanted to check, we would just take it here. We'll plug it in. Negative 2 times a quantity of 3 times negative 2 minus 4 is equal to 20. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, minus 4 is negative 10. And negative 2 times negative 10 is 20. So we get 20 equals 20. We know it's correct. Let's go on to letter B. We have x over 3 minus x over 9 equals 6. So it might be easier for us to rewrite this without fractions. Remember, this is what we did in lesson 10-2. We would identify, looking at our denominators here, what would the least common denominator of 3, 9, and 1 be? Right, well, I'm sorry, least common multiple, right? Well, we know that 1, 3, and 9 all go into 9. So let's multiply both sides of the equation by 9. So we have 9x over 3 minus 9x over 9 should equal 9 times 6, which is 54. And 9x divided by 3 we know is 3x. 9x divided by 9 would be just x, right? So that really simplified our equation quite a bit. Now we're just going to combine our like terms. 3x minus an x is 2x. And then we'll just divide each side by 2. We get x is equal to 27. Again, very easy to check it. We'll do that real quick. 27 over 3 minus 27 over 9 should equal 6. 27 divided by 3 is 9. 27 divided by 9 is 3. And 9 minus 3 is 6. So we know we are correct. All right, I'm going to go ahead here and switch over to the next video for the other two methods. If you're watching this in class, it should just automatically go into the next video in the playlist.